Hey, it's Huck. Let's talk about what's going on in the beer industry. It seems like InBev has been taking over everything in the industry. What if impact is this going to have on craft beer? Well, everybody's got an opinion. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. But I'm not sure myself what's going to happen, but I have some suspicions. The first thing about this endeavor of them taking over is that they, over the last couple of years since they were allowed to sell other people's beer, they've been taking on craft brewers as their distributors. So they're distributing beer for a lot of the local and some not so local craft breweries. And since they have so much shelf space and the ability to do more advertising and get the beer out there, a lot of the smaller and small to medium sized craft brewers were happy to have them as their distributors. Well, now that they've decided to distribute their own products, to buy up craft breweries and then start distributing it, what effect is that going to have on the small brewers who are now using them for distributor? Are they going to continue to get good shelf space? You look, for example, locally here in Virginia, Devil's Backbone has the Vienna Lager, which is a gold-winning beer. Not really my favorite style, but they make it very well, and they've won several awards with it. So everywhere you go now in Virginia, that beer is available on the shelves. You can find it at Kroger's, at Walmart, and any of the major retailers. Well, now that we're going to be getting some beer from Oregon, we're going to be getting we have Goose Island now. Goose Island's showing up on the shelves a lot, and as they purchase these other breweries, are we going to be seeing even our premier brands that they've been distributing disappear, the ones that are not owned? I think overall you can go to the shelves now and you can tell who, first of all, that the smaller distributors are not getting as much shelf space as they used to. So InBev can go to the store manager. Let me start over. I'm sorry. So InBev can go to the store manager and say, hey, we've always been your provider of domestic beer, but now we have craft beer, and we have some really good craft beer that you've probably heard of. So you don't have to go to the other guys anymore and get it. So the impact of this is it's going to reduce the availability in the general shopping areas of the more obscure craft beers. On the flip side of this, I see that we should have an abundance of bottle shops that should be able to now compete with the larger retailers. The exception to this, would be places where you have a store like Total Wine and more, where they can use their buying power to bring in a lot more beer than a small bottle store. So in the urban areas, you're going to have that type of situation where they're going to be buying up the beers. But I think as we grow, we're over 4,000 breweries now. I think as we grow breweries, the other side of the coin is we're now going to see going back to the local neighborhood bar, neighborhood brewery. Every neighborhood's going to have their own brewery. And some of that beer will be distributed, but some of it's only going to be sold on site or locally in a few areas. Here in Blacksburg, Virginia, we have a lot of local bars. So if we get a local brewery, we have one coming, Lefties, that's starting up soon. We have some already, Bull and Bones, a couple others. But they aren't really pushing their beer out to other outlets at this time. And there will be some pushback on Lefties because they're going to they're going to attract customers from the other good beer venues in Blacksburg. From 622, for example, they have excellent beer. The Tap House has a good selection of beer. The Cellar has a reasonably good selection of beer, not to the quality of the other two. They have fewer taps and they have a certain clientele historically of college students, so they have to keep some things on tap for them. And some of the other venues in town are mostly college beer, cheap beer, but even those will occasionally throw a good beer here and there. I guess I would be remiss not to mention the River Mill, even though they don't seem to have a web page or a Facebook page, and I'm sure they don't have a YouTube page, so they probably would never see this. But in any case, they have 25 taps, and usually 5 or 10 of them are pretty good beer. A lot of times the same beers. Don't see a lot of movement through the taps there. 622, huge amount of movement. Every day there's new beer. The Tap House, again, every day there's new beer. The Cellar, they may get in a special beer from time to time, but generally you may see 1 or 2 beers a week moved there. It's not going to be a huge amount of beers moving. But this is where I think we're going with craft beer. that the places that are currently serving craft beer are going to expand their tap selection in order to provide more variety. We're also seeing in Virginia, not yet in this area, but we are seeing that the Kroger, for example, is going with the growler house, and I think that the growler situation could begin to move in a direction where we're seeing more and more growler houses. When I visit my brother-in-law in Greenville, South Carolina, there's a bunch of growlers. They've got stores all over the place. You can go around and you can get all kinds of excellent beer. I don't think that your bars are going to be really pushing the growler service, just because most of them, at least in an area like this, are doing very well to begin with. They don't have a need to produce more sales. The margin on a growler is less than a margin on a pint of beer. If I can make $2 on this, and I get 4 of these in a growler, and that's $8. Well, if I sell the growler and I'm only making $2 to $3 for all the beer in the growler, that's really not a good deal for me as a retailer. Also, there's some waste in the growler situation. I don't know if I've tried to fill them. I've never been very successful. My kegerator here, I'll usually waste a good bit of beer. Sometimes I catch it in another glass and try to save it, because I'm an environmentalist in terms of beer. I want to save the beer, and there you go. So back to the subject at hand: is what's the effect going to be? We don't know. Are they going to let InBev buy Miller Coors? Probably. I mean, money talks, nobody walks. We'll just have to see how it all shakes out in the end. I think that all in all, the craft beer industry is a juggernaut that cannot be stopped at this point. I think that they are just doing defensive work, trying to provide. You can look up the numbers, but the actual domestic beer, the Budweisers, the Miller Lights, are actually losing market share, while the craft beer is gaining market share. And it's still, the craft beer is minuscule in respect to volume versus the more historically domestic beer, the Budweiser. But the 80% number that's generally been considered domestic beer, I think is going to fall away. In terms of dollars, I think the percentage is much higher of craft beer because they cost more, and people are pretty fanatical about drinking them. They're not afraid to get out there and have a nice cold craft beer. This is, of course, the new Oscar Blues IPA. Very delicious. So, I didn't even get paid for that. I just like their beer. They're one of my favorite breweries. So, let's see what happens. Let's see how this thing all kicks out. I'd like to see I'd be interesting if we could see the larger craft breweries get together and perhaps form their own distribution chains. The laws being different in all the states makes that difficult, but that might be a direction that they might want to go, and I think there is some progress in that way. So we'll be interested to see how it works out. Feel free to make a comment on this video if you're interested. You want to ask me a question or tell me I'm wrong. I may or may not believe you. In any case, I enjoy a good debate. Thanks for stopping by and listening to me, and I'll see you next time. This is Huck, signing off.